A week after the high-speed thrill saw us land at the Lone Star State, we make our way to the Action City. Welcome to the streets of Long Beach, where today the Waiuli Tires debut on RaceSpotTV. Excited to have your company, where Arjuna Kenkipati and myself joined alongside by Ewan O'Leary. Well, we know what we're in for. A bit of a royal rumble on the streets of Long Beach, and with a strength of field like we've never really seen before. Ewan, this should be a fun one. I don't quite know what we're in for.
No, you never do around Long Beach. It's one of the iconic venues for the IndyCar circus, and we're here to coincide with the real world event here in the middle of April. We're excited to be here. How much of today is going to be about survival? How much of it is about going to be getting that track position? And how much overtaking are we really going to see?
You said it. I was trying not to, but we're hoping that we do see a bit of passing and maybe split strategies, of course, given that you do have to use two compounds of tires across of the race. Here's a look though at that schedule. Of course, we'll be done with the first half of the season. 6 rounds done, 6 to go, and we'll continue to link up with the series as it makes its way to Barber, and then of course building to the month of May, where all roads lead to the racing capital of the world. Let's talk about points though, because, well, still early doors in this season, starting to see a bit of a breakaway at the front. Adam Blocker, Phil Kraus, only separated by around 30-40 points or so, and then a good 300 points, 400 points, back to John Badefer and to Robert Malechka. I mean, still a long way to go, but Ewan, ultimately, it's going to probably be between them. Phil Kraus trying to win for a third road course race in a row.
Yeah, and he's started off well here as well in qualifying. Give you a bit of an early preview to that. So good to see the top two in our session here this evening, which we always like to see, those at the top of the standings on our screens. But I think you're right, those top two running away with the field. Although we only joined for the second half of Season 1 in iRacing for 2024, we did see a lone leader get caught slowly throughout our time broadcasting. So you do never know when you get an early lead. You've got to remember there's still a long way to go.
And maybe I'm burying the lead slightly, pun intended, when I say that Adam Blocker, of course, will be over in Indianapolis for the month of May. We may not see much of him, and so Phil Kraus may end up storming his way to the top of the championship standings just by default. Here's a look, though, at up above. This track under 2 miles in length, 3.1 kilometers for its 11 turns. You roar your way down East Shoreline Drive, and then a relatively heavy braking zone into the 90-degree turn 1, and then the entrance into the fountain. But with any street circuit, it's about staying clear of the walls. You in this place, though, very, very bumpy, and all about getting the most out of the balance of the car when it comes to setups.
It is, and so that's why we're in the Open Series, and that's why we're going to have a lot of fun with it here tonight. Some big braking zones down here, let's not forget. Turn 1 is going to be a big one. That may be our main passing zone here today. Big braking zone down at Turn 9 as well, but as you mentioned, you'll be rattling over those bumps as you're going down there into these mostly 90-degree corners, although there is a bit of interest. A very unique fountain section, of course, so iconic in motorsport. We'll see if everybody makes their way through there, if anybody's going to go for an early drink.
We've got 12 seconds left in qualifying, and as Ewan kind of alluded to, a decent start from Phil Kraus. He's third. Adam Blocker, though, back in 9th. He's going to have some work to do, and knowing that passing is going to probably be at a premium, well, is that going to be him at a disadvantage? Great shot there of what awaits the drivers as we get ready to go racing. 40 laps thrown onto the board, 1 pit stop expected. Oh, it's going to be a wild ride, that is for sure. Let's not dawdle around. Let's take you down trackside and running down through today's starting grid. Casey Kerwin loves a bit of Long Beach. He joins us and roars to pole position. A 106.047 and quicker than Augustin Canapino, who gets ready to go racing this week with the Juncos Hollinger Racing crew. 59 thousandths between the front row. Phil Kraus and then Michele Costantini on row 2. What a juggernaut of a second row that is in these Dallara IR18s. And then Brian Carey, the best of the Powerslide Motorsports drivers, alongside Christian Hildgaard in the Satellite Racing number 10. Sam Michaels joins us, of course, from Movano Racing. He's got Hamilton and Carboweezy alongside him. Almost identical lap times, it would seem, as well. Crazy to see that. And then Adam Blocker, Brandon Roseborough for Powerslide Motorsports. And then the Hydra Race Geodesic Racing team, 9th and 10th positions. Kevin Burrell, Jacob Oster, 11th and 12th positions, respectively, with Rashad Craig and then the man with the hat, Robert Malechka, back in 14th spot. Sam Carasala's 15th. Connor Harrington was quick in practice. A little bit slower when it comes in qualifying as he starts back in 16th. Seb Alexander, David Porcelli, 17th and 18th, and with some work to do, Alexander second, of course, in qualifying at Texas. John Schwartz, Brad Newman, Nick Sudik, and then Matt Taylor at the back with 2 drivers, no times on the board. one of those times not really representative. Only 1.7 seconds splits the field. Crazy to think about, Ewan, at a track as complex as Long Beach.
Yeah, exactly. It's great to have the margin so close, and hopefully that means we're in for a good race. But I think Casey Kerwin's going to be as surprised as anybody that he's taken pole position here. I was just listening into his stream before we came to air. As he was joining this session, he said, if I can be within 3 tenths of pole, I'll be pleased. And he's just gone about 5 tenths quicker than he did in that practice session as well. Amazing lap time. I don't know where he's got it from, and he may be wondering the same.
And of course, it's always an interesting start here, Ewan, given that we, A, don't get a long time to build temperature in tyres, but B, of course, we're fired out of that final corner. Pace car pulls off and away, and basically instantly we go racing. Drivers tend to get single file, and it does sometimes mean that we'll see some difference on tyre strategies. Look on the left side. Waiuli's green for the first time on RaceSpotTV, but only in the minority. Majority of the field sticking with the harder primary compound tyre.
Yeah, and I think you might as well, if you're in the mid-pack, you might as well just take the pain with that, because if you're stuck behind somebody, there's no point having the faster tyre on anyway, so don't blame them at all. Let's see how single file we really get out of this final hairpin to the green.
You're right, quite right indeed, because they're able quite tightly to keep it formed up. Pace cars off and away, ready to go racing. Here on the streets of the Action City, Michele Costantini feels the pressure, but Casey Kerwin sees the green. Who's going to be brave onto the bumps of the braking zone into turn 1? Already Phil Kraus looking to try and make it 3 road course wins in a row. Backs out, lets Agustin Canapino bring his momentum around the outside. Surely they're going to get single filed out through the fountain. Kerwin storming away to a lead. Chaos though. Harrington runs to the back of one of the satellite racing cars as body parts stream over the track. Lead drivers though through turn 5, and Brian Carey almost spun, saves his car just about.
It's a clean start for the top half of the field, you could say, but for the second half, it's not good at all. There was smoke in the background there too, as body pieces were flying through the fountain section. It looks like we'll have some people down pit lane at the end of this lap. We'll wait and see on that front, but Casey Kerwin gets off to the dream start, defended well into turn number 1. Here comes Christian Hiltgaard. He's looking for a move on Costantino and is up to 4th place.
Sam Michaels is going to try and move forward as well. Akabuizi's been passed and around the outside. Brave place to get it done, but that is the difference in tyres, because Akabuizi is on the primaries. Now Michaels is burning through push to pass. Has already used 3 on the opening lap. You can tell that he does not want to be separated from those in front, and that is where you can see Kerwin's not being allowed to break away from drafting range. Michele Costantini is in a great place right now if he can sit where he is, because Ewan, he's on the primaries.
Yeah, exactly. So just staying in that position, just sitting tight for the moment is the way to go. But this field already getting somewhat surprisingly stretched out. Casey Kerwin gets a second's worth of a lead. Canapino with pressure from Crouch, but then there's another second back to Hiltgaard, nearly a second to Costantini, another one to Michaels. It's very spaced out at the front here. Same can't be said for the midfield, or indeed the back of the field, where we've got scores of drivers in actually.
Yep, Brian Carey, unfortunately, I think did end up spinning. As much as I thought he had saved it for a moment, no, it was not to be. Jump on board with Kraus down into first gear, and look at the green sidewalls on the Waiuli tyres. iRacing with their new licensing deal with IndyCar, getting that scan and scanning it quickly. Now onto the bubble though. Tower getting lit up like a Christmas tree. Kerwin, of course, at the front, going to punch in the fastest lap of them all. But Kraus not going to get close enough. He'll jink to the inside, but just showing himself in the mirror of the Juncos machine.
Yeah, and I wonder how easy it is going to be to overtake if the driver in front of you is constantly on the push to pass. Then just how tricky is it going to be? Meanwhile, Adam Blocker makes up a place on Hamilton Akabuizi, so that is 7th place for one of the championship leaders, I suppose you can say, and a 7th place. But importantly on the primary, still moving forward, which is good news. No point in trying to compete with those on the faster tyre for the moment. Unfortunately, it looks like we've had issues for Connor Harrington on this lap. He's gone back to pit lane.
We have. Let's go back to the start though. Check out what happened. I think it starts with the spaceman. Is he going to be yeeted into space? No, he just runs into the back of the Hydrace machine, and from there, checkup really ensues, and I'm not sure who got the worst of it. You look further up front though, Brian Carey. There's the spin that I thought he had been able to save. Unfortunately, was not to be.
No, a bit clumsy, I don't think. I don't know if you disagree there, into the fountain. Very clumsy from everybody for that such a concertina effect, if you like, to really rear itself. This is the view from the very back. I mean, you're having to come to a complete stop here. Someone's ruining the flowers on the inside line, but unfortunately, everybody getting through, and then it was at the end of the lap when 5 drivers came in.
You say ruin the grass. I say it was just helping out. Was giving them a little bit of a lawnmower service for free.
Don't mow flowers.
Just for free. I mean, that's what the front wing of an Indy car might be good for. You never know. Can see the pressure being put, though, by Kraus because Canapino is going to lose that draft of Casey Kerwin. I said he loves a bit of Long Beach. In many ways, we saw him fall in love with this track more in the LMP2 car, and since then, I'm pretty sure Casey has been a staple at this race every single year. Wouldn't be surprised if he flies out once more this weekend to go and join part of the festivities. And when you get comfortable with a track like this, it doesn't matter what car you're in, Ewan, you just understand the ways to find speed around it.
Yeah, exactly. It's very much the way with a street circuit, any street circuit actually, but this one does feel a bit more rhythmic than a lot of the others because it is really quite stop-start sometimes. You're on the power down here in towards turn 1. Big stop down here, you'll be squirting the power on a little bit towards the fountain section, then there's a big braking, then there's another one towards turn 4, again at turn 5, again at turn 6. It's relentless, accelerating, braking, it's constant. And when you're in that rhythm of getting close to the walls, getting the power on nicely, squeezing it on, braking nicely as well, not sliding the tyres, you are sort of at one with the circuit and almost nothing can break you out of that rhythm until obviously you have a crash or something. But if you stay in that rhythm, then you won't take yourself out of it, if you like.
Here's the look at the drivers now stacked up behind Sam Michaels, who is the last driver on the Waiuli tyres. Michele Costantini, left sides into the wall, although might have gotten away with that one. Qualified well, but he's got Adam Blocker breathing down his neck right now. 40-lap race, the fuel window likely to see drivers able to go just beyond the 20-lap threshold. It's going to be interesting how they decide to fare this one out. And when we start to see the fall-off of those alternate Waiuli tyres, Kerwin fastest lap of 107. 4 last time by a 107.7, which is still almost a full second faster than what Costantini did last time by.
Yeah, exactly. You mentioned that he had a good qualifying, but I don't know if he'll be particularly pleased with 4th. Oh, he won't be pleased with that, and he's out. He's going to go back to pit lane here by the looks of things. Michele Costantini goes wide through turn 1. He just clipped the tyre wall with his right rear, and that has given him suspension damage that he won't recover from.
And it's so easy as well. Just making the smallest of misjudgments. Adam Blocker is the one that takes advantage, moves his way on forward. See if he's now going to close the 1.7 second gap up the road to Sam Michaels as we check back in with Canapino and Phil Kraus being separated by no margin. Let's check out the onboard look with Michele as well, because you'll just see the margin that we're talking about. The tires jut out, and so there's the natural inclination to want to swing out wide, something you've got to try and avoid.
Yeah, but I think it was more a case of just hitting a bit of understeer when he wasn't expecting it. Or, I don't know if you, or if I'm hearing things. He just seemed to ease off the brakes slightly as he was going in there, just ever so, just a real fraction, just to sort of adjust, as if to say, well, I maybe have gone a bit early here and just need to get through the corner a bit more smoothly than this, rather than stopping and starting, if you like, on the apex. And he just seemed to glide onwards, glide to the right, and just clips it. It's small margins, certainly, but it's enough. And if you hit the tyres at that angle, then your tyre, I'm afraid, is going to be all out of whack.
So 1.8 seconds at the front. Kerwin slowly but surely extends those margins. Christian Hilgard in the satellite racing car runs behind, and then just down the road, working their way down East Seaside Way. Last of the Waiuli shed cars inside of this top 10. 22 started. Crazy to say right now. 13 are left on the leading lap. Only 14 running.
Yeah, and only 12 not having stopped yet, which is more remarkable as well. Few of those drivers who are down on pit lane at the moment getting lengthy repairs and may return, I suppose, but a lot of them out of the session and gone for good. It's, well, a race we expect to be attritional, but to be honest, I wasn't expecting it to quite this level.
Yeah, especially knowing that 40 laps is not a long race here by any means at on the streets of Long Beach, but is, you know, it's enough time to make mistakes, and we're not even 8 laps in, and we've seen all of those mistakes play out. There's a look at Kevin Burrell, who runs behind Brandon Roseborough in the Hydro Race Geodesic racing machine, the black and gold entry that cycles its way out of turn 6 now. And this is one of those interesting corners as well, where you see the bravery of the drivers. Look how much you can cut up the inside, and it's the same sort of thing on the exit of turn 1, but this time on the left, in that you can run wide if you feel brave. Have seen on occasion, though, in the real world as well, Ewan, that look into turn 8, drivers try and make it a passing opportunity when it never really is on.
Well, yeah, we've certainly seen occasions down the years of that going on. I feel like the fact that that corner is a little bit more open than it otherwise could be, shall we say, does present a bit of an opportunity, and it's always the way with those corners where you're really diving to the left to open out the corner as much as possible. The trailing driver always thinks there might be a chance here, but there, well, pretty rarely is anyway, and unfortunately, more often than not, accidents do happen. And what doesn't help is another really sort of thick tyre stack on the outside there, which really juts out in a very similar way to turn 1.
And these are those little things that track walks are really meant to go and show you when you go and do them in the real world, right? Because year on year, even if it's a millimeter or 2, you really want to make sure you're aware of those minute changes. And a simulator, even iRacing, can't necessarily always keep up to date with what's happening out in the real world. And well, in the case of the Chili Bowl, they sometimes use iRacing as the historical model to say, right, this is what our banking is meant to be like. Why doesn't it look like this? So it goes back and forth. Going to cross the line to complete what is lap number 9 for your race leaders. So about halfway through this first half of the race. I guess a more logical way to say that, Ewan, would have been a quarter of a way through the race, wouldn't it have been?
Yeah, it's like one of those maths questions you used to get when you were about 9. What's half of a half? Yeah,
exactly. Well, I said it and I was like thinking. Now, would Lewis McLeod have said that? It's almost as obvious as the gap's either going to stay where it is, it's either going to increase or decrease. But, you know, anyway, that's getting off the point. Have you ever said that?
I can't remember who ever said that. It slips my mind, of course. But no, what I was going to say, while we were riding on board with Phil Krause in the bottom right a couple of moments ago, noticed into turn 1 he was lifting off there, quite heavily fuel saving, I would say. Well, heavy, maybe a bit strong, but he definitely was fuel saving on that first braking zone of the lap, and he's sort of making use of the situation he's found himself in here. He did use that one bit of push to pass at the very start as if to say, I want to get through on Canapino, I know I'm quicker, but he couldn't do it, and now that he's realised that he's going to be stuck here for a while, he's decided to stay behind and just save a bit of fuel instead and play the long game.
I wonder if Canapino's also just been saving a bit, and now it's time for him to start to turn up the wick because he used the push to pass. He's down to 7 left in this race. Now, slightly different system from how it works, of course, in the real NTT IndyCar series, where they have a seconds-based allotment. Here it's 10 usages. It gives you 60 to 70 horsepower for about as long as you can hold the throttle pin down the main straightaway. If you really want to try and take advantage of it, you could potentially try and use it in the infield. Well, say infield, middle part of the lap. Not necessarily sure that is the wisest thing to do. You can see on the left side, though, not many drivers really been taking liberal advantage of it just yet.
No, I don't think it's worth it just yet either. It's very much a case of riding around and staying where you are because the pit stops will shake things up. And I feel like a lot of people are going to use the push to pass in that pit stop phase. It might not be a push to pass on track. It may be a push to overtake someone in the pit lane. Not quite as snappy for your acronym there, but it is what it's going to be used for here. If not, then it will be towards the end of the race, and that's what they'll be hoping to use to push to victory, if you like, for one of these drivers. Is it going to be between these guys who started on those alternate tyres, or will it be those who are on the alternates at the end and chasing down? They're already quite a long way behind.
Tell you what, Phil Krause has got an aggressive line out of, I guess that's technically turn 5. It makes me a little bit nervous, but if his car can handle it, you know, credit where credit's due. They've been able to really tame the beast there. Now, Canapino last year on the streets of Long Beach, 25th position. Don't remember how his race went, to be honest, but now Kraus on the button and flies on past. 2.5 seconds now, the deficit to your race leader. I think Kraus gets the message. 12 laps about to be complete. I've got to get a move on.
Yeah, and he is going to here. I think he'll be on the heels of Casey Kerwin before too long, because he did show signs of some quite scintillating pace in behind Agustin Canapino in those last few laps. Push to pass on the way down towards turn 9, by the way, is quite a short run, so he clearly wanted to be aggressive there, clearly wanted to use it, and probably in hindsight he didn't need to, but I don't think people are going to be wishing they had more push to passes around here. It's almost a job to actually get them all off and away here at Long Beach sometimes.
Yeah, and that's where, if it was the seconds-based allotment, it might be a little bit more different, because you might use it for a bit of a short blast and don't get that opportunity. Kevin Burrell uses it into turn 1 and gets onto the brakes, just about locks up and slows down in time, and Brandon Roseborough, deprived of getting the fight back for 8th position. You can make passes here, it turns out.
You can, but that was, well, Kevin Burrell anyway was very nervous about hitting the wall there. Locked it up on the way in towards turn 1, barely made the corner as well. Roseborough was sort of stuck in the position of, well, your whole car's covering the road here and I can't really go anywhere. And unfortunately he wasn't able to reply for 8th place. I'm sure it cost them both quite a lot of time, actually.
Watching the hands, especially remembering, of course, that these cars have no power steering. They're having to work hard. And we're at that point in the run as well where tyre wear is starting to be a factor. Already 1.3 seconds splits Kraus from Canapino as he tries to get the hurry on to catch your leader. Where is your first car on primary tyres, you may wonder? Well, Adam Blocker now, after Michele Costantini's small mistake, finds himself 12.8 seconds off of your race lead, and last lap still found himself 0.8 slower or so. I'm going to wonder here, Ewan, and postulate out loud. We're not going to see the temperature really drop off, as sometimes we see as you race into the evening, which would favor saving the alternates for slightly later on. Basically, these drivers are going to have to get it done on track.
It looks like it. 43 degrees Celsius down on the circuit is about 110-ish on Fahrenheit. Don't know, because it's not real units. So it's pretty warm, I think, is what you could say for late April, in relative terms anyway. Certainly speaking from the UK. So Adam Blocker will be up to him in the last part of this race. He's got Akabuezi not too far behind. It's about limiting the damage at this stage, really, to Michaels, but there is still fairly sizable damage being done. I mean, the least amount of time he lost to any of the top 5 there was still 0.4 of a second to Christian Hildgaard, who was in the mid-8s then.
Here's a look from up above. You can see it's a relatively wide entry into turn 1, and we saw that in the ISO WC back in 2021. Drivers trying to make it 2, 3, 4 wide. Not necessarily the wisest idea, but stuff happens, I guess. Especially when you had 35 cars or whatever we had storming off into the opening corner. This is also an inviting arc down in towards this long left-hander. It's crazy to think not only that IndyCars race here, Ewan, but they have multi-class racing with IMSA as well.
Yeah, on the same weekend, which is great to see. I suppose you think so anyway. Not the full complement of multi-class cars, of course, but any kind of multi-class around here is quite wild, and it's produced its fair share of moments where you start to question whether it's really a good idea or not, especially down into that hairpin, where the GT cars especially have real problems getting their turning circle right. To be honest, I was expecting the Indy cars to do so off the start, but we stayed too wide very well indeed.
Yeah, you know, that really did kind of surprise me, but, you know, impressed at the end of the day that we didn't have chaos out of there. Just had to wait a couple more corners for it all to get, well, feisty. And I think might be feisty up towards the front, because your race leader, he's being closed down. Casey Kerwin, 107.888 last time by. More than a quarter of a second. Phil Kraus closed, and closed fast over the last 2 laps as well.
Yeah, and they're beginning to drop Canapino here. Was wondering whether, or why, sorry, Kraus was making that move on Canapino. Was it a case of he feels he can go quicker, or he feels that Canapino is starting to go slower? And I think it was the latter. Canapino in the mid-8s now. Kraus still able to push on and maybe saved a bit of tyre, to be honest, in the first quarter of this race. He's still comfortably in the mid-7s, as you can see there, quarter of a second gained on that previous lap. If that continues on, we've got a real race on by the pit stop window. Is Kraus going to try and execute the move through there, or will he do something on the circuit?
And as ever, the great thing is we do, of course, have multiple fights brewing on track. Sam Michaels closing up to the back of the satellite racing driver, Christian Hilgard. So expect potentially Canapino, who is definitely being dropped by these drivers, might just take a bad lap or so for him to be caught by those still maybe brawling behind. There's that interesting line from Phil Kraus as you watch them rumble onto West Shoreline Way. Kraus, I did hear it slightly as well, Ewan. There was a touch of fuel saving. I'm not sure if it was necessarily because he's trying to save fuel or more, as he definitely hits the wall there, if he's trying to maybe balance the car out.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure what the idea behind that was. We always talk about shortening your pit stop and all of that kind of thing. Is this race really long enough for those kind of games? Not really sure, but I think Kraus was just making the best of the situation he found himself in. But as soon as he saw Canapino losing speed, he knew he couldn't lose any more time behind him. There was the graze with the wall. Was looking to see eagerly there whether his suspension had been knocked out of line. It doesn't quite look so.
He definitely hits the wall, though. There is no doubt about that. You can tell they're pushing and pushing to the limit now. When do they decide to come down pit lane? If a trip down pit lane is going to cost you, around 40, 50 seconds, depending on how well you enter and exit. Exiting here, by the way, is a endeavor unto its own, but are they going to be willing to try and drop into some clean air? Now, David Porcelli, 32 seconds off of your lead. John Schwartz, then 45 seconds off.
Yeah, there's quite a big gap there. There's a big gap between Akaboise and Burrell if we get time gap stretched out even further as well. So that's the advantage with the amount of drivers who have dropped out of this race so far. The fact that there is a clean track around, although there are a few drivers who have, or a couple of drivers anyway, who have re-emerged since pit stop. Brad Newman and Matt Taylor both spent over 6 minutes down on pit lane. Who knows where they'll be, although they will, in theory, get out of the way.
They're only 5 seconds adrift from one another, so, there's a fight between them as they try and salvage some I-rating. Sam Carasala's also just left the pit lane, so
wow.
Just assume there's some drivers that are going to be out there trying to salvage safety rating and I-rating potentially. There is the Movano driver of Sam Michaels, who's going to be competing this weekend, Ewan, in VCO Infinity, where we will have the IndyCar competing. Now we'll have 4 IndyCar races across of 24 hours. They're going to be racing at Algarve, Portimao, Daytona, not Monza, excuse me, that's the one that we're skipping, Phillip Island, and Road Atlanta. Not a bad 4 races for these drivers across of the world of sim racing to enjoy this wonderful Dallara IR18.
Absolutely, it was the car that kicked off VCO Infinity back in last year, wasn't it? In VCO Infinity number 1, I guess we can call it, in 2023 at Road America. Saw a great start to the day then, and hopefully they can bring 4 good races there as well. Surprised that, to be honest, I know you'll have the reason, I shouldn't. Surprised they skip Monza and not Daytona, to be honest, but I'm here for the chaos.
Hey, if it was up to me, we wouldn't have skipped any of them, but
that's true.
We skipped Daytona a few times before, so no skipping Daytona this time by. How about that? And I can actually reveal, because the drivers and I think teams are now aware as well. You know what the first race is this year, Ewan?
I probably should do, but I forgot.
No, you shouldn't, because the drivers only found out today, but it's one we've never done before.
Okay, well, there's many of them, I can't think. Algarve, is
one
it?
in particular that's relevant to the conversation we've just been having.
Oh, God. Yeah, I guess IndyCar.
At Daytona. We're going to Daytona to start again. And you know what we're finishing with? What I'm actually more excited about. Sorry, IndyCar fans. Also at Daytona.
NASCAR?
No. Mazda MX-5.
Oh, that is good. That's good, yes.
Oh. Sorry, I'm getting chills right now just thinking about it. Sorry. I'm getting very off track, but that's because we're sort of, about to hit the halfway mark of this race. 20 laps complete, 20 still left to go. It's kind of stalled out slightly. If you're wondering what VCO Infinity is, I know we didn't do a great job of actually describing it, did we? It's a 24-hour race, but one like no other. 24 individual races. 5 cars, 5 tracks, 24 individual races then built from all of that. And so the IndyCar joins the Super Formula Light, Ferrari 296 GT3, Global Mazda MX-5 Cup, as well as the NASCAR Xfinity Series cars. I think that's all 5. I mentioned them properly. And then
So.
Algarve, Road Atlanta, Daytona, Phillip Island, and Monza, the 5 tracks that we're going racing at. It's going to be great, Ewan.
It is going to be great. I've actually never commentated on the Algarve on iRacing, so that's weird, but it's true. And
I mean,
so,
don't blame you. It's only been out for 6 weeks.
well, I know, but I still would have thought everyone uses the new track like immediately, so I would have thought I would have seen it by now, but I haven't yet. So yeah, looking forward to it. It's always so great. I really enjoyed the first one that happened about this time last year. It was a great fight between Urano and Redline that came down to the very final race. I'm not sure it was quite the same in the autumn, was it?
Yeah.
But it was still fun, and you should join us. It will be a good afternoon and evening, morning, and then afternoon again of racing.
It'll be a good day of racing, that is for sure. David Porcelli, the first to pit, by the way, as he emerges after an 8.7 second pit stop. Watch that pit exit. This is what we were kind of talking about. You have to be very careful of cars already up to speed, and that was a car. It was a lap down, not much that he could really do. 1.5 the gap between Kerwin and Kraus at the front, and 2 drivers that battled in the IMSA Esports Global Championship at the end of last year, but one with more experience in this car than the other. But Kerwin brings that experience of the track, and so far 22 laps about to be complete. I think they may come down to pit lane this time by and put themselves off the Waiulis and on to those primary compound tire.
The 2 of only 10 drivers to have not made a pit stop so far in the 21 laps of this race, and so it may be time now for them both to bite the bullet that they will have to once in this race. Kraus, I thought was going to do it there. He seemed to take a slightly narrower line, but in fact he was just getting off the corner a bit straighter, and so they will go on for one more and leave us with actually 9 still out there because John Schwartz comes in.
I was actually just wondering why they haven't come in. And then I look at the lap times. Adam Blocker last time by 1:08.293. And now he's on the button to try and get a bit more speed as Hamilton Akabuizi comes down into pit lane in the Team i5G number 7. Is this a bit of a recognition that these alternates have held on, the Waiulis have held on pretty decently all the way through the run? Kraus with a 1:07.6 last time by. That's only a 10th and a half of his best lap of the race.
Yeah, and he's been running that pace for most of the race, to be honest. It's been, well, certainly since he got past Canapino anyway. It's been really consistent in the mid-7s. He's been gaining roughly 2 tenths a lap, although not quite every time round. He's just edging closer and closer to Casey Kerwin. I'm not actually sure he'll pit on the same lap as Kerwin at all here, to be honest, because he might try and just overhaul him off, or in the pit stops, if you like, off the pit lane. And on the racetrack, 1.3 seconds again as they go over the line this time around. As Akabuizi gets out in 9th position. There are more gaps opening up for them to get into, but from here on in, or from up until this point I should say, they seemingly haven't had that ideal slot to just go into after their stops.
And so as Akabuizi finds himself dropped out in front of Robert Malechka, he'll now be wondering, what can he do? How can he get those Waiulis fired up quickly? Ooh, Kraus wiggles close to the wall, but dances his way out of trouble. 25 laps, seemingly not a struggle, but by that measure, interesting that Adam Blocker elected not to pit slightly earlier. He finally sheds the primary compound tire. You can see the green sidewall on his car. Now, where is he going to fare out compared to Hamilton Akabuizi, who's just got onto the power out of the final corner? I'm pretty sure Blocker should be clear.
Well, let's see. It's a very wide entry in towards turn number 1, and Akabuizi is going to be there just on the right-hand side. It's going to be quite close here. It's a real slow entry to the first corner, and Akabuizi will be flying. Here he is, but the track position goes to Adam Blocker. Somewhat surprised, actually, that these two didn't come in earlier, because clearly these sets of tyres would have been able to go further than the 16 laps that they're making them do at the moment.
Big moment for Akabuizi, but he just holds on to his car. And clearly fresh tyres, making the most of them while he can. Now, here come 2 more. Hilgard and Michaels, finding that 24 laps, tyres, fuel, on their course. Kerwin, Kraus, Canapino, masters though, not just of the track, the conditions, the car as well. Going on to that 1 extra lap, which will leave them with hypothetically less fuel to put in, but maybe some traffic as well as they work their way, maybe for the final time, out of the long right-hander.
Yeah, I think Casey Kerwin's got to be in this time because he's got Robert Milecka right in front of him there, and he's really got to avoid traffic as best he can. Blue flags, of course, will be around, but there's no point waiting for them, in my opinion. You might as well come in now with 15 laps to go. Well, I guess he's trying to maximise this stint on the better tyres. He stays out, though, willing to take the risk of getting caught in the fairly heavy traffic he's got ahead of him.
Yeah, but Milecka in that private label mega team, hyper team, power team, slide hype car, not going to pose too much of the troubles there. He goes one lap down, will unlap himself by the time that these leaders come down to pit lane. Interesting that they didn't, and in fact, Kraus 3/10 slower that lap. Kerwin a 107.511. A flying lap. Let's focus though on those that have pitted for a moment, because now we've got two drivers on the harder compound of tyre, gives them a little bit less grip. Two drivers now behind them, plenty of grip and tyres that don't have far to go to the end of the race.
Yeah, so this is going to be the race from here on in. How is the track position game going to be in terms of overtaking? Oh, gone! Samuel Michaels spins around out of the final corner.
And you got to wonder if that was just a little bit too impatient, if he hadn't reset his tools to get to grips with the new compound of tyre. And Adam Blocker, new fastest lap, 107.233, even with all of that. Now Phil Kraus is going to stay out. Casey Kerwin's going to come in. Business booming here on the streets of the Action City. We're being spoiled with another great race.
Yeah, so Phil Kraus will go further, so will Augustin Canapino, to leave the two of those, the only ones out there on the circuit. There goes Casey Kerwin into the box, just gets into the lane nicely, up on the jacks, change of tyres, all the compound fitted, and out onto the circuit. How long is Kraus going to leave this now until he comes in? Has he still got speed? Still in the sevens at least.
Definitely not going to be able to go more than 2 laps, I'd have to think, but 27 laps, it's a mighty run, and we'll now have to see if Kraus can try and make it 3 wins, at least on the road courses, on the trot. Kerwin comes out in some clean air. That's going to benefit him, that is for sure, as behind, Tower lighting up. Adam Blocker trying to keep himself moving forward after that small slip up from Sam Michaels. I think he had to come back towards the pit lane potentially as a result of that, and he's lost a bit of time. No, in fact, he's ended up staying out there. Timing screen lied to me, and I thought for a moment Phil Kraus was going to have to come in.
Well, this is what I was talking about with the push to passes earlier on. He's using that now down the front straight, and I believe he's probably going to use one again around the rest of the lap. But Casey Kerwin responds with a push to pass of his own. He had one more earlier on. Not sure whether that still is the case, but he's certainly going to use a couple of them now, as there's all sorts going on here in the battle for 4th place.
We've seen plenty of lockups, that is for sure, and Christian Hildgaard's feeling that pressure. He's used a push to pass in defense. Let's not forget, you can use it in both ways. It's feeding you that little bit more power, giving you that impetus to move your way on forward. Now, we knew that Casey Kerwin was going to get in front of Augustin Canapino. Adam Blocker has just run into the back of the satellite racing car, and the left front of his wing has been detached. Now, I don't want to get too stressed out. It's very possible that on Blocker's end there's no worries, but for us, that looks very, very bad.
Well, we're going to see how bad it is into turn 1. Is he struggling for front end bite or not? Yes, he is. He looks like he is to me. And he all of a sudden has got Hamilton Akaboyesi right behind him. He's done a good job not to feed himself straight into the wall, actually, here, to be honest, because when you've got that front wing damage, it's sometimes not immediately apparent to you quite how bad it's going to be. And you can nose it straight on into the turn 1 wall, but he hasn't done that at least. But his race is as good as over.
Here's Kraus into the marks, and he didn't slide, so that's important. Where is he going to fare compared to his rival, Casey Kerwin, who I believe is coming out of the final corner now and does have some traffic that's held at least relatively out of the way. He's going to get a slingshot maybe here from Nick Sudik into that opening corner. It's going to be closer than I thought it might be, but Kraus going to get passed by Kerwin on the inside, surely up to speed, and now traffic going to split them as well. Worst case scenario for Phil Kraus as he tries to get those primaries up to temperature.
Oh, disaster as well, as the lap car just gets caught out by the wall there at turn 3. It just sort of juts out right in your way, and he had to get out of the way of Phil Kraus. Eventually did, but Kraus probably lost a couple of tenths at least in that exchange. Just around a second and a half now between the two of them. And Kraus is going to have to do this on a very short time scale. Only 11 to go at the line.
Oh, and you know, it's not like he's got the alternates on, the Waiulis, that give you that bit more grip, right? He's got to manhandle this car in many ways, and I hope the balance of the car hasn't shifted around too much, and he knows exactly what he's got to deal with. We've got drama, though, that is for sure. No shortage of that on the streets of the Action City. Let's go back first to what happened between Blocker and the satellite racing car of Hildegard. There was never really the chance to get there. Blocker just a bit too aggressive, a bit too deep on the brakes.
Well, I'm not even convinced he was actively trying to overtake here. He's just broken too late and gone straight into the back of Hildegard. It's very small contact, and he's pretty unlucky, to be honest, in my opinion anyway, to have lost so much front end as a result of that. He's now sixth. He is soldiering on here, clearly deciding that a run on that half a front wing, if you like, is more advantageous than coming in and repairing it, so fair enough, but he is losing stacks and stacks of time already, back to sixth place.
And, well, it goes from bad to worse. And just to be clear, I never was implying that he was trying to pass. It was just saying that he went too deep and, like you say, made the mistake. That's another sort of a slip up there. Kabuizi's rear wing magics itself back into just solid contact with its connections, but slippery stuff through the hairpin. Not ideal by any means. Now, 10 to go at the front. Let's focus at least on what should be a fun fight. Sam Carosalo is going to pull out of the way, and it's going to be 1.3, just under seconds, with 10 laps left to go between Casey Kerwin and Phil Kraus.
Yeah, the race very much on, and you saw the slide from Phil Kraus out of turn 6 there and through turn 7 as he was trying to get the power on up that slight crest of a hill. It was very, very telling that Kraus is chasing down Kerwin, but also telling that these tyres really don't have the grip that the others did. Saying that, Kraus did just set his fastest lap of the race last time round, so I don't know what that's all about, but he's going very quickly regardless out there on those slower tyres. In theory, sliding again on the way out of turn 6, but just trying to get everything he can out of this car. He needs to catch soon because he's not going to have very many laps to action and overtake, which feels like it is going to take laps of work really around this circuit.
And, you know, when it comes to these tyres in particular, they don't fall off too hard. So interesting to see that Phil Kraus able to turn them on very quickly. Can he make the most of them? It's close to within 3 or 4 car lengths. There's a little bit of a snatch of the brakes there as Kerwin locks up, heading out of the hairpin. That gap closes down. 7.5 tenths this time by at the line. And in terms of push to passes, 6 apiece. So no real difference between them there. Gotta wonder if Phil Kraus is going to really have to magic a move out of nowhere, or maybe more pertinently with what lies in front, if traffic might be his friend.
Wow, that was good wheel work again as he got close to the wall. He takes so many risks, doesn't he, at turn 5, just jumping over that curb on the inside, but he knows that he can get away with it. Closes again on Kerwin. More wheel work on the way out of turn 6. Now slightly downhill towards 8. Getting close to the walls again, and now onto the back straight. Now the push to pass games begin because we're less than half a second away, and so push to pass at this stage is going to be absolutely crucial, and where you use them.
Riding on board, just listening out of that hairpin, how careful you've got to be as he demands 700 horsepower out of those rear Firestone tyres. Of course, both ran the Waiulis at the start. Keep an eye on the battle at the front. We'll keep an eye, of course, on these two as well. Kabuizi on the Waiulis and trying to charge his way forward, but no charge from Kraus into the opening corner. But now he sits, and now, once you sit behind for too many laps, it becomes very easy to run the pace of the driver in front of you, maybe even more so on a street circuit.
Yeah, exactly, and you sort of get, that was a big slide as well, again, out of turn 5. You sort of get used to having the driver behind you as well as the leading car here. Casey Kerwin will get to a period of comfortability with having Phil Kraus, even Kraus, right behind him. So he's got to make sure that he strikes before then, does Phil Kraus. Now, I think turn 1 that time round was a good occasion to do it. He was close enough, but he wasn't on the push to pass very early. He didn't use it at all, so he's still second.
Loving this look, by the way, at all these different fights. There goes a Akabuwizi trying to now go and set something up the long way around, not switching it back and crossing back underneath as they head on towards East Seaside Way. But now on the button, just continuing to put the pressure on. And don't tell me he'll do it the long way around at turn 9. Door gets slammed shut on him. Both drivers up front, though, on the button. And Kraus forced to go the long way around with his momentum. Doesn't hit the tyre wall, but Kerwin holds on. Wheel-to-wheel stuff on the streets of the Action City.
So close. They were both skating it in under brakes, just so close to the wall in the case of Phil Kraus, so close to feeding him into the wall in the case of Casey Kerwin. Fantastic driving, though, from the both of them. They stay on the road at least, but you do slightly worry that neither of them are going to win if they fight too hard.
Exactly. It's so easy to tangle. We've seen it through the hairpin, and that's where you're trying to set stuff up. Even if you're not making the move, it's just something to think about. Kraus, not one of those drivers that's known for, well, desperation lunges, but he's known for winning, and like I mentioned, trying to make it 3 in a row and stop Casey Kerwin from depriving him of some valuable championship points as well, as they cross back to the line with an estimated 7 minutes of racing left to go. Running out of opportunities, that's for sure. 5 push-to-passes left apiece.
Yeah, and 5 laps up the line as well. So are we going to get to a stage next time around where we're using a push-to-pass every lap on the pit straight? Now, that effectively means that it's almost not worth having if you're Phil Kraus. Maybe if Kerwin decides to not use it one time and can still stay ahead, then he really does have an advantage. But at this point, with 5 laps to go at the line, don't see any point in conserving push-to-passes. He'll start using them in some unusual places, will Kraus then.
And does he get it stopped in time? Yes, but Kerwin gives him the space and gives him just enough room to hang himself without crashing. This is great stuff, and you can tell that Kraus wants to make it happen soon. He thinks 2-lap fresher tires, he's got a bit of a chance, and as they break down into turn 9 once again, Kerwin can do nothing but watch as Kraus rips the lead away.
And he slides his way through the right-hander as well. Now, how does Kerwin respond? Down the inside of the hairpin!
And wow, great stuff, but room given once again. Push-to-passes being used. Kerwin now has got to try and find a way past. Kraus has got to find a way to fly away.
Oh, he's going to go defensive, but not quite enough. Kerwin to the outside. He stays behind. Doesn't decide to take that risk on the outside line at turn 1.
I can't breathe right now, genuinely. I'm very, very tense. Oh, 5 to go, and it's not done. Don't you turn away just yet. Casey Kerwin's not giving up without a fight. Phil Kraus is hanging that rear end out like there's no tomorrow. With 2 push-to-passes left, he's not got much time left to really defend in terms of additional power. He's just got to be perfect, and so far, look at the body language of the car.
Yeah, and there's the slide from Kerwin as well. You just worry for his sake that Kraus, now having seen the lead, is not going to look back, and he's going to start to turn on the speed, because he has been quicker than Kerwin throughout the race so far. On a race-long pace sort of difference between the two, you would bet on Phil Kraus being the stronger of the two, and that's why the previous battle was so important for Casey Kerwin, but he couldn't stay ahead.
And here we go. I think Hamilton and Akabuwizi finally is alongside and going to make the move happen on the satellite racing driver of Christian Hillgaard. This for 4th position. Augustin Canapino comfortably on the final spot on the podium, and they will make it work. Wheel to wheel and side by side out of the hairpin, but contact as they work off of it. And both drivers on the button. The i5G driver tucks back into line and with some draft going to cut back to the outside. Now that's a brave move, but one that's indicative of him knowing he's got the grip underneath him. Alternates versus primaries, but no quarter being given. Satellite Racing's Hillgaard holds on.
Fantastic racing between the two. Hillgaard keeping 4th place and keeping Akabuwizi away from the very slim hope of a podium here. They're way over 10 seconds behind Canapino now, who's surely safe, and Phil Kraus as well, more than 20 seconds behind this battle. Is he safe in the very front of this race? It's looking more and more to be the case with 3 to go.
And as much as I would love to keep an eye on the few fights that we have kind of been tracking here and there, it's not to say that there aren't other battles as well. So across the line once more, Kraus 7 odd tenths clear of his main rival. Just behind them in the fight for 11th, you have John Schwartz and Robert Malechka as well. So Plenty of drivers still with stuff to fight for as we head into the closing stages here. But this is only a 40-lap race. You mentioned, of course, the drivers in the NTT IndyCar Series getting ready to go this weekend as well. Now, the great thing is that iRacing's got a longer series. If you want more than 40 laps on the streets of Long Beach, well, you've got plenty more races this week to come.
Yeah, exactly. The full-length editions, if you like, are available based on the real-world schedule. So, absolutely, those races really will be about attrition. If this one hasn't been, then those ones certainly will. Just 10 on the lead lap here. Goodness knows how many there will be by the end of those longer races, but I personally think it's something we could stand to see a little bit more of in sim racing. I know people don't like especially full-length events, but they're certainly available for everybody as Kraus gets it slightly wrong into the hairpin.
Just a bit of a lock-up, got me a bit excited, but Kerwin slipping back now. I think it was 2 laps earlier, but 2 laps can still make a difference with these primary compound of tires as Phil Kraus makes the move happen, and May just have pulled it off at just the right time as well. So with 2 laps left to go, let's ride around with some of these other battles. Keep an eye on Hamilton and Carboweezy, who, remember, we saw drivers go 27 laps on the YU-Lees and do lap times in the 107s. Carboweezy stuck behind Hilgard, 108.545 last time by.
Yeah, and just saw there into the hairpin the way he was shaping that car up for a really late apex and a really good run onto the front straight. Very smart, but I feel like Hamilton and Carboweezy has made a mental note of that and will think maybe I could even have a go at him into the hairpin. Ooh. If not, then I'll just make him take a little bit of a different line, sort of halt his exit slightly and have a better chance into turn 1, because that's where this race and this battle even is going to be settled, ideally.
There is damage on the left side of the front wing for Carboweezy in the i5G machine, so maybe that is what is also slightly halting the charge and slightly upsetting the balance. But white flag in the air, and well, if you've got push to passes left to use, now is the time to use them. Kerwin's trying, look at him saw at the wheel as they head through the fountain section, but Phil Kraus still 8/10 in front.
Yeah, he's been strong, has Kerwin, in terms of trailing Kraus. He's been keeping him honest, but nowhere near close enough to making any moves. What a drive from Kraus here to work his way through the field and make those overtakes at the exact right moments, showing and utilising his superior race pace over the rest for a possible race win.
And the diversity of the series, right? Last week on the high banks of Texas, this week on the streets of Long Beach. Next week we continue rolling with the NTT IndyCar Series, and we're headed to the Alabama roller coaster, to the Barber Motorsports Park. And well, Phil Kraus will go there full of confidence, because after Texas was all about Jason Brophy's victory, private label team hype roar once more. 3 in a row on the road courses, and Kraus does it in style, beating Casey Kerwin by just under a second. Agustin Canapino will end up 12 full seconds off of your race lead. And while we'll keep an eye on Carboweezy's hunt to try and get past Hilgard, final lap of this race, not much action to really speak of.
Now, I thought Carboweezy was going to give that a bigger go, but maybe just fell away in terms of having the ambition and the ability to get close enough on those last laps. He uses a burst of push to pass to the line, but it's not enough, and he stays 5th. And demonstration, really, of just how important having the track position, because no matter how good your tyres are, doesn't overhaul very good defending.
Push to pass, push to defend, that's something else to think about as well, as Phil Kraus gets escorted into the wall by his private label Hyper Mega Team, Power Team, Slight Pied, whatever the team name is, teammate Robert Malechka. Wrapping up a rather fun affair as the final drivers cross the line, David Porcelli and then Brandon Roseborough. 22 cars at the start. It was a crazy opening, and only 14 will end up seeing the checkered flag. Let's run you down through the race results and then hopefully grab a word with a couple of the drivers. But it is private label team hype on top, Phil Kraus, and then the Spire Motorsports driver, Casey Kerwin, putting the pressure on. Agustin Canapino preparing to go racing on the streets of Long Beach with a 3rd place in the virtual world here today. And then Christian Hilgard for Satellite Racing just in front of the Team i5G driver of Hamilton, Carboweezy. Adam Blocker 6th with the damage to his front wing. A bit of bad qualifying for him. Best he could really do in terms of damage limitation. And then Sam Michaels, the Movano Corsa driver, 7th in the number 3 entry. Kevin Burrell and then David Porcelli 8th and 9th in front of Brandon Roseborough for the Hydro Race Geodesic Racing team. 9 positions gained, by the way, for David Porcelli, biggest mover of the day. 11th for John Schwartz, 12th for Rob Malechka, who had to pit early for a front wing change. Nick Sudik and then Richard Craig 13th and 14th, with Brad Newman, Matt Taylor heading back out there and getting 15th and 16th respectively, along with Sam Carasala on track. Michele Costantini uses his alternate account to no effect, unfortunately, today. 18th on the board in front of Connor Harrington and then Brian Carey, while behind them Jacob Oster and Seb Alexander at the very back of the running order. Well, I was hoping that we'd have a chat with a couple of the drivers, but we've run through the finishing results and no drivers to talk to. So instead, I guess we can look forward you into what is one of my favorite road courses on iRacing, the Barber Motorsports Park. Very, very underrated. But like I was saying earlier, showing the diversity in IndyCar from the streets of Long Beach to this flowing track through the hills of Alabama.
Yeah, I think these 3 weeks have certainly shown that diversity in IndyCar, maybe better than any other 3 weeks that we have here in the calendar, from an oval to a street circuit to a road course, and a road course like no other either. This one rises and falls all over the place. Technical challenge as well, difficulty in passing sometimes, but we said the same about Long Beach before seeing the race that we just had.
A very, very fair point, but this is one of those tracks where I'm hoping as well. We won't have the Waiulis. We'll be back to the regular alternate compound of tire. Very much hoping that we'll see something interesting when it comes to the strategy there. We're now joined, though, by race winner Phil Kraus, 3rd consecutive win on these road/street courses. But Phil, you were really made to fight for this one. Had to first get past Augustin Canapino on the Waiulis, then get past Casey Kerwin on the primaries. Talk us through that charge through the race.
Oh, that was stressful, Arjuna. I'm a puddle, man. We just got a heat wave. Horrible timing on the heat wave. But
perfect timing. You need some BOP.
Oh yeah, that was really fun, Arjuna. Honestly, I'm surprised I got by Augustin when I did, because it seemed like we had about the same pace, and then he made a mistake that lap, and then he didn't really end up fighting me, because I know a few laps earlier I got close out of the hairpin, and he matched me on the button, but when I ended up passing him down the back straight, he didn't match me, so I was like, I mean, okay, I'll take it, I guess. And then Casey, I mean, we all know how quick he is. I had to do something different on the strategy, so once I got by Augustin, we went hard fuel save mode, and those extra 2 laps on the reds really paid off in the end with the primary tires, and with that, I just had to catch him off guard with that move into 6, just to disrupt his rhythm a little bit, and almost crashed myself passing him.
We were kind of surprised in many ways. A, at the line that you took through turn 5, but B, how fast the tires were at the end of the stint, because warm track temperatures, was there not really much fall off to speak of, or were you guys just really making the most of the car when it was light on fuel?
No, there wasn't really that much fall off this race. I think we, on the reds, the opening laps, at least for me, was like a 7.4 or something like that, and I was still able to do that lap at the end of the stint on the reds, but obviously those first few laps, you're all bottled up behind other cars unless you're on pole, so I don't know how representative that lap time is for fresh reds, but yeah, no, there really wasn't that much fall off here today.
Don't forget, by the way, Phil, they're no longer fresh reds on the streets, they're fresh greens.
The fresh green, sorry. I apologize to all you cactus lovers.
I just realized that you may not be able to say that. I can say that in California, though. Phil, congratulations on this 3rd win on the street/road courses in a row. Can't wait to see how we go next week at Barber, which, let's be honest, what a roller coaster that is.
Yeah. Cheers, Arjuna. Have a good night, everybody.
More sweat for Phil Kraus, and I think we need to turn up the heat even further, it would seem. We were talking briefly about what lies ahead at Barber, but let's quickly, Ewan, preview the season that still is left to come, because Barber kicks off the back half, Richmond, Indianapolis Motor Speedway, but the road course over to Twin Ring Motegi, back to the racing capital of the world, and then the streets of Belle Isle. There's still plenty of excitement left to come.
There is the famous month of May all to come here on iRacing, and in the season as well, which I think is the real key. But on a personal level, I really enjoy seeing odd ovals in these kind of series. So Richmond and Motegi are very high on my list of ones to watch and to look forward to for the remainder of the season. Always enjoy going to Barber, of course, a great road course, and Indianapolis in May will be interesting to say the very least, even if it will be on the road course to start out the first race in May. But plenty of variety to come in the second half of the season, and plenty to fight for in terms of the championship, although Phil Krause very much putting his hat in the ring for that here tonight.
Yeah, that is very true, and I think that the fun thing as well is, of course, more ovals coming the way of the real NTT IndyCar series, and we can enjoy some unique ovals here on the sim as well that maybe in the real world we wouldn't get the chance to enjoy. But for now, unfortunately, it is time to bid you farewell. Another great race on the streets of Long Beach, and it builds some excitement for what lies ahead this week, both in the virtual and the real world. Don't forget real full-length races this week in the iRacing IndyCar Series, all building up to what's bound to be an action-packed Acura Grand Prix of Long Beach. For the team behind the scenes at RaceSpotTV, thank you so much for joining us. Ewan O'Leary alongside myself, Arjuna Kankipati. Congratulations to Phil Krause, winner here from the Action City.